Hello everyone, presenting to you Vajiram and Ravi's current affair analysis of the newspaper articles from the Hindu and Indian Express of 10th of October. Across the 9 major highlights of the day, we will be analyzing very thoroughly the two ones. First one, importance of ASEAN group and how we can strengthen the bilateral relations with this very important multilateral group. Second, amid the concerns highlighted by the RBI governor on aggressive growth pursued by our NBFCs, we will analyze the growth prospects, their challenges, and the related way forward with respect to NBFC. Then we will simplify 7 other important articles. So by the end of the discussion, you will be having 2 analyses, 7 simplified articles, a handout for your revision, and not to forget, a prelims questionnaire available in the end. So do check it out. So today, the first major article of the day is about our analysis on India and ASEAN summit. The reason why we are reading this is because our Prime Minister has recently made a visit to Laos. You try to answer whether Laos is a landlocked South Asian country or not. That's the first question. Bringing back you to the context, PM has visited to Laos for attending the ASEAN-India summit and the East Asia summit. So, with regards to this, first of all, we will discover and understand what is this multilateral group of ASEAN? Why is it significant for India and more so for the world? What are the challenges faced by our bilateral relations with ASEAN and how can we strengthen them further? To begin with, ASEAN, a multilateral bloc, initiated its formation through a Bangkok Declaration. Bangkok Declaration, which happened in 1967, was accommodated not by all the ASEAN member countries. Currently, there are 10. But during Bangkok declarations, only 5 came together. The others couldn't come because in the Vietnam a war was going on and the others were having sides with USA and the other parts of the world because of the Cold War going on. Once, after 1990s, when this Cold War and Vietnam War eased off, all the other remaining 5 countries also joined it. And so, this led to the creation of a bloc having 10 members in total. In 1995, they for the first time signed a very unique deal which was never found before in the Southeast Asian geopolitics. This was to create a nuclear-free zone in Southeast Asia. And therefore, you can see that none of these powers are enabling themselves in nuclear domain. Why? Because of a pact that was initiated and signed under the ASEAN Forum. In 2007, there was a Cebu Declaration. Question might be asked to you in the prelims that Cebu Declaration is related to what? It is related to ASEAN. Remember that. So Cebu Declaration accelerated the formation of formalizing the ASEAN community because previous to that, they were only collaborating in the form of forums, just like how we are doing with Quad. So they were similar to Quad only. But then there was a call to create an ASEAN community by 2015. When I'm saying community, it's not just a forum and it's not just a multilateral group. It is a community which is intertwined through social aspects, economic aspects, and cultural aspects. So, to create a political security community, economic community, social cultural community, this Cebu Declaration was finally formalized in the year 2008, leading to declaration of ASEAN Charter, which laid down the rules as to how to formalize this ASEAN community, bringing a legally binding agreement into place. In 2015, finally, we see the launch of the ASEAN community. But if the question gets asked to you, when was the origin of ASEAN, the correct year would be 1967. I hope you are getting the concepts and why is it called an ASEAN community now, because it comprises not just of the strategic domain but the cultural, social, political, economic domain as well. So this is an integrated region integrating themselves through social parameters, economical, cultural, technological and strategic parameters altogether. Now, when did India started engaging with ASEAN? So first of all, India is very keen to associate itself with ASEAN because ASEAN is the seventh largest economy of the world. Seventh largest economy means it is having great potential to offer. It has got third largest workforce in the world. It has got a very huge consumer market. It is also the global manufacturing powerhouse. So, to access all these features of ASEAN, India was always keen to associate with it. Also, ASEAN is the main key pillar of India's Look East and Act East policy. Central pillar because many of the ASEAN countries, for example, Singapore, are one of the largest trading partners of India. And not only that, ASEAN, ASEAN itself is the 11th largest trading partner of India. Singapore itself being the 6th largest trading partner of India so far. So therefore, looking into the potential that the ASEAN has to offer us and what India can do for ASEAN in order to ensure their security, we have started evolving and elevating our partnership with them. It will evolve from the year 1992. 1992, remember, when all the ASEAN countries have came together because of the closing down of the Cold War and the Vietnam Wars. So now in the initial years of engagement, India will only be a sectoral dialogue partner. Sectoral dialogue partner means we will sit together for certain meetings, certain purposes. Let's say only for business purpose, only for manufacturing, only for agriculture, only for textile, not for a national purpose, national interest. So we were only a sectoral dialogue partner till 1992. In 1995, we were elevated at the status of dialogue partner, which means now when the dialogue is happening, it's going to be conducted between the foreign ministers of each country and not just by the industrial experts, okay, or the sectoral experts. Then in 2002, as you can see, 20 years have passed by. So we are commemorating 20 years of our relationship, and finally this partnership got elevated to a summit level, which means now we will not just be sitting at a dialogue level, but we will be conducting summits. Therefore, East Asia Summit, ASEAN India Summits got organized from the year 2002. Now begins the era of strategic partnership. Why? Because of the growing aggression of China and the other external influences of USA and other countries, and also the economic turbulence that was going on in the Southeast Asian region. So we thought of encouraging our strategic partnership now. So in the year 2012, so which makes me remind that this is 20 years. So 20 years happened in 2012. And here, in order to commemorate this time, we finally established and converted our partnership into a strategic partnership, which means now security alliances can also be created. We might also be providing each other maritime domain security and other security aspects. Okay. 2018, which means commemorating 25 years of comprehensive partnership, we revamped this strategic partnership towards the maritime domain. So now we will be supporting each other on the maritime domain as well. Why is it important? Because the Southeast Asian region, especially the South China Sea and the associated regional seas, they are often inflicted by many crimes like illegal fishing, piracy, some of the sovereignty issues, encroachment issues done by China and other countries. So there was a requirement, and also disasters, not to forget tsunamis came, it struck 2007. So we would be requiring maritime domain. So we now also revamped our relations to up to maritime domain. Now, comprehensive strategic partnerships started getting there from 2022 onwards. So in 2022, when we were celebrating naturally the 30th year of our relationship, we further elaborated the strategic partnership into a comprehensive one, which means we will now be focusing on building FTAs, free trade agreements as well across multiple sectors, along with providing security. So this is how we evolved and this is how we elevated our partnership. But of course, we saw multiple challenges, we saw multiple issues with our partnership as well. The issues are actually a byproduct of the significance, the importance of the partnership, and you will see how it is correlated. The first significance of our partnership is that Southeast Asia's market is one of the most thriving markets of the world. It can give us the economic opportunity of reaping into a $3 trillion worth economy directly. This also suggests to us that if we are able to have investments from there and exports our product over there, taking the benefits of its consumer base and the GDP that it overall accumulates, which amounts to the 7th largest economy, 7th largest trading bloc. So we will be able to reap the benefits of the Southeast Asian markets if we can have certain liberalized agreements, especially the economic and the trade agreements with ASEAN countries. So the significance is that it is a gateway to Southeast Asian markets. Second significance is that it can be a very good strategic partner for us, given that we are also having issues with the aggression that China possesses, which is not just a threat to the Indian Ocean region, but also to the Southeast Asian regions, to the marginal seas. You already know the South China Sea dispute. So it can be a very important strategic partner for us. And therefore, we have been conducting many strategic summits as well. It also enables the forum associated with ASEAN India summits, also enables us to put our grounds as the net security provider of that region, of the Indian Ocean region and of the Indo-Pacific region. And we can get that opportunity by associating ourselves with the ASEAN countries. Not only that, maritime security is also important to counter-attack China, to counterbalance China also and the other aggressive forces. So for that, in 2023, we already conducted a maritime exercise together with ASEAN. So ASEAN-India maritime exercise was conducted in South China Sea in 2023. This also posed a threat to the Chinese that India might be now providing security services to ASEAN. So next one is, it is a connectivity pivot for us. If we want to access the Southeast Asian markets, we have to conduct various infrastructure projects. The ongoing projects are the IMT project, the India, Myanmar and Thailand trilateral corridor, which was also asked in UPSC prelims examination 2024, this year only, and also the Kaladan multimodal project. So these two projects will help us to pivot our connectivity with the ASEAN. To enable the success of these projects, we would require the support from these countries also, ASEAN countries also. So creating contact with them, enabling and strengthening bilateral ties with them will help us to bolster and to further fasten up these connectivity projects. Next is cultural synergy. We have had cultural historical ties in terms of Buddhism and other religions, and therefore we can forge it because people are the best tools of diplomacy. So the soft power can be leveraged between India and ASEAN, and this can help us to boost our cultural synergy with the help of religious activities, music festivals, educational institutes, whatnot. And then providing energy security. Think about India. We have got multiple alternatives and innovation to produce renewable energies. For example, the ISA project of India, International Solar Alliance, we have got immense solar power, we have got immense power to generate wind energy as well. And then comes the Southeast Asian regions, which have got immense supply of semiconductors, and they have also got supply of some of the important trade routes as well, which carry a lot of oil, and therefore they can help us provide the alternate source of energy so that we can shift from our conventional partners of oil and petroleum, and we can shift towards Southeast Asian, and in turn they will also be benefited by our innovations on renewable energy. So we will be able to bring more transformative and sustainable energy models together. And then supply chain resilience. So post-COVID world saw that supply chain resilience, or the disruption, especially caused by some of the economies, needs to be now backed up. In order to back it up, we need to have alternate trade routes. We need to have alternate manufacturing and supply agents and supplier groups. ASEAN could be a very prospective trade bloc in that regards. So it is very influential, very instrumental in our supply chain resilience also. Then what are the challenges faced by the partnership? The first thing that I told you was regarding the Southeast Asian markets. Though we have the access to it with the help of ASEAN summits and dialogues, but still we have got a very huge trade imbalance. If, let's say, I import 40 billion worth trade to the ASEAN countries, I am importing $85 billion worth goods and services, which means there is a very huge trade imbalance which is worsening in the last 10 years. It's not improving also. There are multiple reasons to it. First is the trade barriers. So think about the services sector, the IT sector, the ITES sector of India. We are flourishing. We are dominating it globally, but not in the markets of Southeast Asia. One, because of the problems of language barriers with us, and the other, technical problems as well, because of which the receptivity of Indian IT sector is not very much welcomed in the Southeast Asian region. Not only that, Indian professionals are not readily allowed to situate themselves, locate themselves in the Southeast Asian markets. So because of these barriers, we have got huge trade imbalance, because anyway, our most prominent export service provider service sector is compromised, IT sector is compromised in Southeast Asian markets, right? Second is the tariff barrier. So what happens? Tariff is one of the most important impediment towards a country's trade. So in order to remove these trade barriers, one needs to establish certain kind of trade agreements. With ASEAN also, we have got AIFTA, which is ASEAN and India Free Trade Agreement, under which we have eased off the tariff barriers from each other's side. When it comes to India, India has eased off trade barriers on about 75 lines. But when it comes to ASEAN, they have removed only up to 45 trade barriers coming from India. So the tariff that have been removed from their side is less as compared to tariffs removed from our side, which means the ASEAN countries are getting more access to Indian market as compared to Indian manufacturers and the Indian businessmen getting access to their consumer base. So that disparity is happening because of tariff barriers. Second is non-tariff barriers. Think about the pharmaceutical industries. People who belong to that know that dealing in Southeast Asian countries, establishing, getting themselves registered is very costly. Getting themselves registered is also a very time-taking process. A lot of hurdles with terms to regulations, etc. is created from the side of Southeast Asian countries. Therefore, pharma, which is, we are the pharmacy of the world, we have already read that in the previous Analyst. Despite that, we are not able to set up our pharmaceutical industries over there, export our pharmaceutical products over there. Second, talk about the agriculture product. We would want to supply them agriculture product, but then they sanction us on the grounds of sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So these are the non-tariff barriers which those countries impose on us. So there needs to be better talk, better collaboration on this. Next imbalance is navigating the Chinese factor. China is also now understanding that Southeast Asian market has got a huge consumer base. So a lot of things are getting dumped from Chinese market only. This is making competition worse for the case of India. And not only that, China is also causing multiple sovereignty threats over there. For example, towards Philippines, Thailand, for the South China Sea. And it is also trying to build multiple connectivity projects over there. So to counter that, we also need to develop and augment our infrastructure projects so as to counter what? The One Belt, One Road initiative of China, especially across the Southeast Asia. Next is the underdeveloped infra. We already previously talked about how it is a connectivity pivot, which means we are developing the Kaladan multimodal project and we are developing the IMT trilateral corridor as well, which is India, Myanmar, Thailand connectivity project. But all of them have still not got completed because of lot of delays, lot of hurdles in corporation. And that is why underdeveloped infra leads to loss of trust between both the countries. This has already happened in the case of India and Nepal. So Nepal thinks that we have big brotherly attitude because we have overpromised, we are under-delivering in terms of infrastructure. Similar thing can happen with respect to ASEAN. So the underdeveloped infra is also one of the bone of contention. And last but not the least, the regulatory hurdle. It is not easy for both the countries, for both the trade blocs to establish certain business or industries in each other's ground very easily because of the large regulatory hurdles, especially related to the migration, the movement of the professionals. So how to beat these challenges and how to bolster our partnership? First of all, the main problem was AIFTA because it was more favorable towards the ASEAN countries as compared to India. So now is the need to review it, recalibrate it, and to make it more comprehensive so that it is going to be beneficial for both the countries. Which means if I am eliminating 75 trade barriers, trade tariffs for you, then which means you should also be eliminating at least 75, if not more, for us to come into a equalization ground. Second is completion of the key connectivity projects like the highways, the trilateral highway, the Kaladan project that I have already taught you. Then address the manufacturing competitive gaps. Think about the countries like Vietnam and Thailand. What do you know them for? You know them for their very easily accessible workforce which gets the work done in lesser prices as compared to those which are done in Indian markets. So the competitiveness, the manufacturing industries, the kind of SEZs that are deployed in the Southeast Asian markets are very efficient as compared to India. very cheaper as compared to India. So whenever any country, let's say USA, wants to deploy any manufacturing industry, it would be resorting for a Southeast Asian country and not India. So there is a competitive gap which needs to be addressed. How can we address that gap? We can learn from them, we can take the best practices from them, we can collaborate in the terms of transformation, information transfer, and with the help of this competitive gap could be reduced. Next is to build a comprehensive ASEAN-India energy partnership. We just now understood the significance that we both have got good leverage in terms of ensuring our own energy security. Why not collaborate for it and ensure each other energy security as well? Okay, then deepen its strategic engagement with ASEAN, particularly in the maritime security. In this regard, the International Fusion Center that is provided by India in order to disseminate the information regarding the disasters or regarding any maritime disputes, that can be extended to ASEAN countries as well. It is also already operative for Singapore, but not for the other countries. We can think of leveraging and we can think of expanding it. Next is ASEAN-India Green Partnership in order to not just achieve the sustainable development goals, our nationally determined contributions, the Panchamrit principle, but also finally to create a world which is developing on a sustainable basis. So which other power can do it better but the world's largest consumer workforce, that is India and ASEAN together. This was about our India-ASEAN partnership analysis. Now, this is a question for you which you can try to attempt. Discuss the economic dynamics between India and ASEAN. What steps should India take to address the trade imbalance and enhance economic cooperation in the ASEAN countries? The next topic is on the non-banking financial companies and their growths and related concerns, because recently RBI Governor Shaktikant Das has cautioned NBFCs against aggressive business growth, saying that you should not be trying to grow aggressively at any cost because it can fall out on the Indian economy later. Okay, so first things first, what is NBFC and what NBFC is not? Let's get that clarity first. If I expand the term, this is non-banking financing company, which means it's a company, it's not a bank. It is registered and regulated by the Companies Act 1956 and not by the Banking Regulation Act. But is it regulated by RBI? Yes, not entirely, but most of them are regulated by RBI. It is supervised by RBI. When I talk about NBFCs, how are they exactly different from bank? So when you go to the bank, you can not only take the loans from the bank, but can also create demand deposits, which means you can create current account and savings account. In the case of NBFCs, you can go and ask for loans, ask for financial services, ask for leases, ask for insurance also, which the banks won't be providing. But if you go to them and ask about the demand deposits or to establish current account or saving account for you, they will directly refuse because that is not their domain. So they do not accept the demand deposits. Their primary function is to provide you financial services much easier as compared to the banking system. So let's quickly look into the difference, the features, and let's differentiate between banks and NBFC. Who can accept the deposits? The banks can, NBFCs cannot. Is it a part of payment system? It is a part of payment system. ATMs, etc. work for NBFCs or not? No, there's nothing like an ATM for it. It's not a part of a national payment system. Next is, can we issue checks with respect to NBFCs? Of course we cannot, because there's nothing like a demand deposit. What are we going to demand? So next is insurance. If there is nothing like a deposit, there's no need to insure also. So the NBFC's account are not insured. That is the biggest challenge, and that is why RBI governor is warning that even if you're growing aggressively, ensure that you do not go through the liquidity crunch, because if you go through the liquidity crunch, it will have a spillover effect in the entire economy, which happened in the case of IL and FS crisis, which you must have heard of. Now, with respect to foreign investment in banks, because it is more regulated, allowed only up to 74%, but in the case of FDIs, in the case of NBFCs, it is up to 100%. Very important fact for prelims. Statutory ratios is applicable for bank. They have to follow SLR, CRR, etc. Not applicable for NBFCs at all, because they are regulated by the Companies Act, not by the Banking Regulation Act. Next is their regulation, their statutes are different, we have already read. And what are the top players? HDFC, Kotak, ICICI, these are the banks. And NBFCs are Bajaj Finance, Muthoot, Ujjivan, and your Bandhan Bank, etc. Okay, so when we have read this, now let's understand what is the significance of establishing NBFCs in the economy. First of all, to simplify and give more accessibility of the financial services. Let's say you want to purchase gold loan. Where would you be going? Towards the bank, which is going to have more procedures, which is going to have more complex regulations, or towards an NBFC, let's say Muthoot Finance, because it will simplify the process for you. It will provide you the gold loan very easily. So it complements the banking sector. It provides the services similar to banking sector only, and that too much more easily without much hassle. That is the significance of NBFC. Next is, according to RBI's financial stability report, they have been performing better than the banking sector as well. Because of the growing trust of the public on the NBFC over the bank, the annual compounded growth rate of NBFCs accounted up to 18 to 20% in 2022 as compared to bank growth rate, which was only about 10%. So they also perform better as suggested by financial stability report. Second, because they are promoting their products in more affordable way, in more accessible way, in more available way, therefore they are also causing financial inclusion in our country, so it is also promoted by the government of India. Next is, they are more technologically advanced. Why? Because government intervention is less. It is more driven by the corporate agencies, by the companies, and the nature of corporate is such that it is more competitive. In order to leverage the competitiveness, one would try to innovate more. So you will see more customized solutions, more innovative solutions, more hassle-free solutions in the case of NBFCs. Some example of financial inclusion, can you tell? The Bandhan Bank. Bandhan Bank is a microfinance institution, but basically it's an NBFC which penetrates in the rural and the semi-urban areas, provide them the financial services. Technologically advanced one, for example, Bajaj Finance has got a very easy app and you can avail anything very quickly. Then they also have better customization of their products as compared to banking systems, because they know, they appreciate, and because of trying to leverage the competitiveness, they try to give customer what they really want. So in the terms of insurance product, in terms of financial services like gold loan, they're much more competitive. That is the significance. So a lot of money of the country also goes into the hands of NBFCs. But then what are the challenges? Challenges basically is the vulnerability of the NBFCs because of less regulation. Of course, if we over-regulate it, it will become equivalent to banks, with no point of over-regulating it. But at the same time, under-regulation is also a problem here. First of all, it doesn't require to maintain CRR and SLRs. There's no statutory liquidity ratio, cash reserve ratio that is suggested to be maintained by it. It has to be maintained under Banking Regulation Act by all the banks of India, but not by the NBFC. The problem with this is, if they are not maintaining this ratio, which means the amount of money I'm lending to you, if I'm not having even 10 rupees to repay you back, if in case of urgency you come to me and ask for my money, then in that case, I am going through liquidity crunch. You will not be getting the money, so you will also go through liquidity crunch. Somebody is associated to you wanting money from you, they will also go through liquidity crunch. The entire economy, therefore, will go through liquidity crunch in that case. So therefore, it will lead to default and bankruptcy. In the worst cases, will lead to loss of customer trust. Customer will stop depositing their money in the banks, and if the money is not there in the bank, it will lead to economy crunch, liquidity crunch in the entire economy. Next is, it is also said to be a tickling financial bomb, which is created by a nexus. So what happened in the case of IL&FS? So IL&FS was already not performing well, but the credit rating agency and the auditors, they were pitched by IL&FS in such a way that they were continuously providing them good ratings. So customers thought that, acha, it is 5 rated, I will put more money into it, without looking into the actual financial audits of it. The auditors were also biased. So certain type of nexuses are often built by the NBFCs, by the financial creditors, by their credit rating agencies and their auditors, which confuses and fools the consumer. So consumer put a lot of money in these already failing NBFCs, which eventually lead to their crisis. This further gets into the economy and causes liquidity crunch. That happened in the case of IL&FS crisis. Second is the asset and liability mismatch. Liability means how much money they have deposited. So you must know NBFCs are of two types. One that takes the deposit, the other that doesn't take the deposit and raises its money with the help of funds and with the help of bonds. The other, which takes the deposit, they do not take the demand deposit. They take it for longer run and it uses deposit to further give off loan to other people. Okay. Now what happens happen is this deposit that they have taken, this is their liability, and the loans that they have given is their asset. Let's say their loans are not repaid off by their consumers, then in that case they will not be able to give off their liability also. This will cause again what? The liquidity crunch in the economy. This happened in the case of DLFS housing crisis, and it also faces through the connected lending problem. Most of the lending that most of the NBFCs does is through and within its inner management only. So these people who already know the loopholes of the companies are the ones who are gaining the advantage of these loopholes, are gaining the lending from these loopholes, and therefore the chances of repaying of that loan becomes minimal, again leading to further and worsened asset liability mismatch. So what are the regulatory measures which can be taken and which has been taken by the government of India? First and foremost, over-regulation will stifle the growth, will stifle the competitiveness, and will not make it better, will not avail the financial inclusion for the country. So therefore, what is required is a differentiated regulatory approach. Let's say an NBFC is systematically important, which means having money more than 500 crore or 1000 crore. If it is systematically important, it needs to be more regulated as compared to some company which is having only a corpus of 50 lakh rupees. Okay, so if a company is having a threshold of 1000 crore rupees, it will be less regulated as compared to the systematically important companies, systematically important financial companies, as you can see through this pyramid. So the regulation should go like this: least for this layer, more for this layer, more for this layer, and majority maximum most for this layer. Okay, now what government has already done, RBI has promoted a special liquidity scheme. The main problem of NBFCs would be that in the dire times they might not be having liquidity. Liquidity crunch could be there, so they would be having no money to give off to their customers. So in that case, to deal with it, a special purpose vehicle was created. What it does, it issues securities. These securities are purchased by none other than but our RBI, our dear friend RBI. RBI in turn gives it some money. This money is then held into a fund, and whenever liquidity crisis occurs in any of the NBFCs, this fund provides them the liquidity surplus. Okay. The second is targeted long-term repo operation. This is something I want you to answer because it is very important for UPSC, has already been asked in the prelims examination and was pretty much a news since last 2 years. What is targeted long-term repo operation? Please write down in the comment section. Next is certain NBFCs. So there is no requirement of maintaining CRR, SLR, but certain, because they're systematically important for the economy, they can have larger backlash on the economy. Therefore, they have to mandatorily maintain 10% of their deposits in liquid asset only, so that liquidity crunch can never happen there. Next is NBFCs having greater fund than 50 lakh rupees are required to be registered with the RBI so that RBI can regulate and supervise them. And in order to supervise and regulate them, RBI has already told them to submit their periodical returns. So with the help of this and with the help of this strategic differentiated regulatory measure, we'll be able to synthesize, we will be able to synchronize, and we will be able to completely utilize the NBFC potential, the enormous potential that it has to make our economy a 5 trillion economy. This is a mains practice question for you. Try to practice it, try to answer it, and if you are in the Delhi, you can visit our Delhi center also and get it evaluated by the mentors. Now, as the Nobel Prize distribution season is going on, so now we will see that Nobel Prize in Chemistry has been awarded for computational protein design and for protein structure prediction, not just for predicting the protein but also synthesizing the protein, that too using artificial intelligence. This also highlights a very beautiful synergy between two very important applications of science, which is artificial intelligence and biotechnology, how both of them are coming together, how protein synthesis can now be done using artificial intelligence. You can put it in the application part of AI as well. Okay, now coming to this topic, this Nobel Peace Prize in Chemistry has been given for what? For building computational designs to synthesize the protein, that is one, and second, for predicting the structure of the protein. So for that, 2 prizes have been given. One prize is collectively shared by Demis Hassabis and John Jumper, who have been working in the deep mind of Google, and they have developed an innovation, a tool which is known as AlphaFold. This AlphaFold enabled them to predict correctly the structure of the protein, which is one of the most complex biological structure present in the nature, and also the building block of all the organisms of life, that has been predicted accurately using this computational method AlphaFold. The second prize is given to David Baker for building and using certain similar computational designs for synthesizing proteins that were never available in the nature. So these two have predicted and this person has synthesized. So these are the chemistry Nobel Prize winners. But this is not the first time when somebody is getting Nobel Prize for discovering or for working upon proteins, because proteins, which are the largest and most complex molecules, have been subjected to multiple scientific studies for decades and have garnered multiple Nobel Prizes to the researchers. For example, Christian Ann Finson and Stanford Murray and William Stein have already shared a chemistry Nobel Prize for discovering how the three-dimensional shapes of proteins come into place. And what is the determinant? So the determinant that they predicted was the sequence of amino acids. So what happens is, see, everything has got a basic building block. For example, the carbohydrate that we consume, the basic unit is glucose. Proteins have a basic unit, which is amino acid. Amino acids again combine themselves to create peptides. Peptides combine themselves to create polypeptides, and many polypeptides come together, combine themselves to create what we know as proteins. Proteins have got multiple applications. First of all, in building our muscles, in building our structure, muscles have got proteins. Therefore, for our hair nutrition, for our bodybuilding, everything, protein intake is suggested. Okay, so protein is there for our bodybuilding, is there for our structural stability. It is also there for building enzymes in the body, which acts as a biochemical catalyst. It is also responsible for building hormones in the body. So there are multiple reasons, of course, for some immune response also, and also to store the nutrient and the energy. All of it requires protein synthesis. How this protein synthesis happens? Protein synthesis happens with the help of two processes: transcription and translation. So first of all, what is transcription process? We know that all the genetic information is encoded inside the cell in the form of DNA. DNA is too long, but I require only one information. I just want to build one immune cell out of it. I will just cut out that address, that immune cell address and information out of the nucleus. If I do that out of nucleus, that process is known as transcription. I'm just cutting out the required piece of information, so then this double helix structure gets converted into a simplified single helix structure. So now what I'm doing, I'm converting DNA into RNA. I have extracted out the required information. This process is known as transcription. I have transcripted DNA into RNA. Okay, now this information, which is encoded, has to be decoded to create something. So then this information will go to the ribosomes which are situated in the cell. The moment they get inside the ribosome, they will be synthesized into peptides. They will be synthesized into amino acids and then into further combined into peptides, and then they will result in the formation of protein. So the process of conversion of RNA molecule into desirable or desired protein molecule is known as translation. So this is how the protein synthesis happens in the body, and this has been highlighted by these entire articles. What you have to read from here, learn from here, is what is AlphaFold and what is DeepMind and who were the chemistry laureates, Nobel laureates, and what is the structure of the protein, what is the basic unit of the protein. Protein, not to forget, comprises of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and sometimes sulfur. So the question comes, sulfur will also be made right. Okay, now coming to the next topic, very interesting one. Here the Union Cabinet has given nod for continuation of fortified rice supply, the free fortified rice supply till December 2028, extending for the next 4 years. So what is happening, that there was a central sector initiative that was first launched in the Independence Day speech of 2015 by our Prime Minister. He said that now the rice distributed under various central government schemes like PDS and midday meal schemes would be fortified, and this entire universal fortification should be done by the year 2024. 2024, which is this year. Is this scheme successful? Yes, it is completely successful, universally available. Now, it would roll out into 3 phases. The phase 1 would say that all the rice that is being provided under these 2 schemes, Integrated Child Development Services and PM Poshan scheme, For these two schemes, the rice that we are going to provide should only be fortified and should be provided free of cost. Next is in the phase 2, we will extend this supply of fortification rice not just to these two schemes but also to all the aspirational districts of the India. In the phase 3 said that to all the remaining districts of the country, which means to every district of the country, now the provision of providing fortified rice has to be made mandatory. So with this comes the central sector scheme fully funded by the central government of providing fortified rice. One question should come to you, and this is also important for answering, for putting introduction in your mains answer as to what is fortification of rice, what is the proper definition. According to FSSAI, which is the food regulator of India, fortification stands for deliberately increasing the content of essential micronutrients. Please remember, not the macronutrients but micronutrients in the food so as to improve the nutritional quality of food, and not just provide the nutritional quality but also provide public health benefit with minimal risk to health. It should also not pose any kind of health to the public. This is the proper definition of fortification. Why is it required in India? Because we are suffering from a lot of micronutrient deficiencies which leads to hidden hunger. So this hidden hunger is first of all caused by the high prevalence of anemia that is caused by the deficiency of iron, folic acids and vitamin B12 in the body, especially of our mothers and children. 1/3 of the India's children are stunted. We are ranking first in the world when it comes to stunted children. One in every third women in India is suffering from anemia. So that is the gravity of the situation going on. Also, National Family Health Survey highlighted to us that anemia is widespread in our country, and besides having iron deficiency which leads to anemia, we have also got multiple other deficiencies. For example, deficiencies of vitamin, mineral deficiencies, etc., which hampers the proper growth and development of our people. So therefore comes the need of fortification of rice. Why was rice chosen? Because rice is the most staple diet of Indians. A very good statement was also given that rice is an ideal vehicle for supplying micronutrients in the Indian context. You can also use this in your introduction or in your conclusion because this is a very good statement. The reason why it's an ideal vehicle is because about 60% of the population is directly dependent upon consuming rice. And the per capita rice consumption in India is 6.8 kilograms per month. So if we fortify the rice and we make it mandatory to be supplied to our citizens, we will be inducing these micronutrients in the most effective manner. Okay, now when I'm saying fortification of rice, how exactly is it done? Am I inducing some kind of chemical in the soil so that good crops of rice are grown with more micronutrient? No. It is artificially done to your supply. So what happens is, first of all, the dry rice flour is mixed with a premix of micronutrients containing of folic acids, containing of vitamin B12 and the other minerals. Okay. Then water is added into it, thick paste is made, and that out of that, a machine which is extruder machine is used, which creates kernels of rice similar to the shape and size of rice which is used in Indian market. Now this is the amount of fortified rice that we have had. We have to now mix it with the conventional rice that we will be supplying. So now after drying these fortified rice kernels for some time, when it is dried, cooled and packed and having a shelf life of about at least 12 months, then they are blended with the regular rice. And what is the blending ratio? 10 kgs of fortified rice kernels must be blended with 1 kg of regular rice. Okay, so 1 kg of fortified rice you can expect to be containing this much amount of iron, folic acid, vitamin B12, etc., which is also good for mental health. It can also be augmented with zinc, vitamin A, B1, B3, B2, B6. Now you tell me, which ailment is caused because of the deficiency of vitamin B1 and vitamin B3? Try to answer that in the comments. We have read about how fortification happens, what exactly is fortification, is this a central sector or a sponsored scheme, and what is the validity of the scheme. So we have read all of this. Is it a cost-effective method? Yes, because of the total annual food subsidy that the government incurs for providing subsidy on food products, on especially these grains. the fortification costs only less than 2%, but the enormous health impact that it has is very high. So the cost benefit ratio is pretty good with respect to fortification. The next article is a very important one, very close to the heart. This is about the mental health in India's materialistic world. Why are we reading this? Not just from the GS 2 and 3 point of view, we'll be reading about the health and the preventive aspects, but also from the ethical point of view. Okay, now why are we reading this? Because 10th of October is also celebrated as World Mental Health Day, and this year's theme of World Mental Health is prioritizing mental health in the workplace. Why this particular theme has been chosen? Because recently you saw the case of an Ernst & Young employee, 26-year-old girl who, because of work stress, took away her life. This is just one case. We also saw many cases, many were unheard. One more case covered by this article was a 38-year-old software engineer with 15 years of rich work experience in Chennai also ended his life. We also saw a CA who was having a very successful career, also because of the work pressure, resorted to ending his life, which makes us contemplate and revisit our idea of success in the society, which is the main theme of this article. So first of all, why is it that despite having successful careers, despite having good productivities, despite having everything that society renders as success, you are still not feeling worth living? For that, the first thing we need to see is, how do we define success? So currently, what is success to you? Try to tell me, what is success for you, to you? What do you understand by it? Currently in our world, success is often equated to relentless productivity and material wealth. The more cars, mobile phones, houses you have, the more successful you are. Even if you are completely isolated from the society, even if nobody is talking to this person, still you would be considered successful nowadays. If you are relentlessly productive, which means despite your bad health, despite not having best of the days, you're still working relentlessly, that is also equated to success, that this is a very hard working person, a very gritty person. This also creates hustle culture in the society. But are humans made for hustles? Are we machines? Are we bots? Or are we social beings which were inherently comfortable in living in social atmosphere and social structures? Our happiness from the time immemorial has always been embedded with the happiness associated with our loved ones, with our community, with our society. So we are losing and we are getting disillusioned by the actual definition of success. Yes, it is subjective to everybody, but there has to be a sustainable definition of success, something that can be achieved, something that can give us not just short-term pleasures, but also long-term pleasures. Now, India, it also highlights that is currently witnessing a surge in the mental health disorder. Over 197 million people suffer from conditions like depression, anxiety, substance abuse because of those things. And the reasons for this, according to the author, is first of all the economic growth. The frenzy upon the economic growth, India becoming one of the largest economy, also says that we are going to work a lot. If we are going to work a lot, we might also require a lot of productivity. And if it is not a sustainable productivity, if it is not a collaborative approach, of course, this economic growth frenzy, though it is creating new opportunity, it will also intensify the societal pressures. The second reason that is highlights is the crisis driven by materialism, the frenzy to collect more and more material in order to appear seemingly successful. At the core of this crisis are the existential questions which we have forgotten to ask to ourselves. Back in the days, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, they also used to ask these existential questions to their followers and among themselves. Said that, how should I live? What is the purpose of my life and what am I living for? And what will bring me happiness? What will bring me purpose in life? In the words of Socrates, he rightfully said that an unexamined life is not worth living. But in this world of a very fast-paced frenzy, achieving productivity, achieving success at a very short period of time, at a very shorter run, shorter age, what we try to do is we forget to examine our lives. And this is also one of the reasons why, with all due respect, the NEET AIR 1 of 2017, AIR 1 took away his life. The reason maybe is because we are not contemplating what can give us personal happiness. We are losing the self-awareness of ourselves, and we are not examining the true meaning and true purposes of our lives. These essential inquiries are overshadowed currently by the frenzy about the pursuit of efficiency, productivity, and material wealth. So it's fine if you attain a lot of material wealth. If you get a lot of productivity, you are often appreciated for becoming very productive person. Then why is it inducing stress and anxiety into the minds of the people? Because there is no end to achieving productivity. There is no end to achieving the materialistic pursuits. This leads to relentless pressures, especially coming from the urban living who are having more expectations. Financial instability because you are purchasing lot many things, even if on EMIs, but you are doing this will lead to financial pressures, and also it will lead to fierce competition among the people. So students are also getting fierce competition. A lot of competitive aspirants are feeling depressed, are feeling out of competition, and they are also resorting to losing their life because of these relentless pressures which are not sustainable to endure. Next, even if those who achieve the material success find that wealth and status do not deliver the true well-being, you must have already heard from many people that happiness cannot be purchased by money. But nowadays on Instagram, you can see that give me money, I will get my happiness. This is still not true, because happiness cannot be purchased by money. Happiness, contentment, and self-purpose we can only get it from self-awareness, self-contemplation, and examination of what is the purpose of our lives. Not only that, material wealth also provides temporary comfort. That is very true. For the shorter run, you will become Shah Rukh Khan, but in the longer run, there will be deeper emotional and psychological needs which will still be left unaddressed. Indira Gandhi also said that I am the most loneliest person in the world. The more top in the ladder you go to, the more lonelier you become. So there is a cost of success also, only given that what we think of success, what are we equating as a definition of success, that essentially reflects how are we going to feel later upon getting that success. Now, why do people chase material wealth? Primarily for social validation, neglecting the self-awareness. Why are we gaining social validation? Because there is a sense of competition in the society. But this is not just a societal fact. This is also induced by our political and economic systems. See how. According to Karnataka Shops and Commercial Establishments Amendment Bill of 2024, it permits the employee to work for more than 12 hours a day, which means up to 125 hours in a month. And they will be incentivizing you for overworking yourself. This is a political system. When it comes to the economic systems, you see how the Instagram and the YouTube algorithm works. They will push ads so much so that you will be compelled to buying things. This is inducing materialistic culture. If you are losing out on something, they will make you feel as if you are losing out on something so that they purchase your product and they seek the validation. End of the day, everything that we are trying to do is to attain the social validation. Why? Because we are inherently social beings. We want to be socially associated with the people. The more conventional and traditional way of doing is to have community kind of environment, is to have sense of belongingness, is to have more meaningful friendships. So, to address this crisis, we must shift our focus, shift our perspective from individual success to collective well-being. This made me remind of this meme. In Three Idiots, both of them says that दोस्त फेल हो जाए तो दुख होता है, लेकिन दोस्त फर्स्ट आ जाए तो और दुख होता है. Why does this happen? Because of the rising individualistic feeling. If I am suffering, that's wrong. But if you are not suffering, that's bad for me. But it's actually not good, because if we think like this, then the entire society will crumble down. This is already happening in the consumerist cultures of Western countries, where every third person is on some kind of depressive medications. The reason for this is because we are growing more individualistic and less collective. One example, one best practice that can remind us of building the community services or community-like environment is from Brazil, where they have developed community gardens which have helped the residents reconnect by sharing responsibility and fostering a sense of belongingness. The sense of belongingness towards each other, towards all of us, finding happiness in others people's success, enjoying their success as if it's your own, and also ensuring that from your own side you are having a stronger sense of self-awareness, purpose, and self-belief. This will lead to cut down on the individualistic tendencies, which is the root cause of causing depression in the society because it causes isolation. So improving mental health requires embracing community-oriented living that challenges the individualized lifestyles. Community living fosters sustainable alternative. The responsibilities are always shared, so the pressure never mounts upon one person alone. There is a collective purpose so that one doesn't forget the purpose. If one is forgetting, the other would be there to remind him. There is mutual support and an environment that nurtures the emotional and the psychological well-being. So when people ask that why the previous generations, those were not even having mobile phones and best of the facilities, were not getting through those traumas and depression, the reason is because they were knitted in close societies, in community associations. And that is also the need of the hour as highlighted by this editorial. In the next topic, we will read how EVM batteries work, because what happened recently, delegation of Congress leaders have met the Election Commission of India on Wednesday seeking thorough probe into the alleged manipulation of the EVMs in the Haryana election. You all know what happened during Haryana election. We were almost convinced that Congress was going to win the election, but suddenly the BJP won the election. So therefore, the Congress delegation has moved to ECI. What is the concern? See, the concern over there is they are saying that EVM which were used for the counting were operating, some of them were operating with a 99% charging capacity, which is good, but the others were operating at a 60 to 70% battery capacity, which is not allowed. So therefore, investigation on these EVMs have been charged. Now, with regards to this, we will read how does the battery in the EVM works. So EVMs essentially, they work not on the power supply but on the alkaline batteries. Why? Because they also have to be deployed in Naxal areas, remote areas, mountainous areas where such electricity lines couldn't be there. So therefore they need self-charging. For that, batteries are inducted into them. We have got two units. We have got control unit, ballot unit and the VVPAT. Okay. So the control unit has got a power pack of 7.5 to 8 volts. Then there is a VVPAT having a power pack of 22.5 volts. Okay, this is not very important. What is important is who creates these batteries and this entire EVM infrastructure. It is created by Bharat Electronics Limited and Electronics Corporation of India Limited. Important for prelims, marking it important. Next is ECI sources say that new battery usually lasts for the entire election, but it also depends upon the intensity of the election, how many votes were polled, how many times it was used. But what happens is, whenever the voltage drops to 5.8 volt, then it tells us that a change battery status has to come so that this EVM is replaced. This 5.8 volt drop, which means 66% drop in the battery, which happened in the case of Haryana. Okay, that was alleged by the Congress spokespersons. Now, the batteries are equally handled as carefully as the entire EVM system is handled, even when there is any change in the battery also. Then also the political parties and their representatives are informed beforehand, and one representative has to be there when this battery is getting changed. So therefore, this kind of tampering issue or this 66% of battery, this was unacceptable by the party people. Now talking about EVMs and VVPAT, the idea of EVMs, the electronic voting machine, for the first time was mooted by the Election Commission of India in December 1977 to overcome the ballot paper flaws. For example, the tampering of the ballot papers, delay in the process of calculating the votes, etc. So therefore, MB Hanifa was the father of EVM in India. He invented it in 1980. It was used first in 1981, not at the Lok Sabha level, but at a smaller level by election of the North Paravur Assembly constituency of Kerala. Then, to use it at the national level for Lok Sabha elections, Section 61A was inserted into which constitution? No. Representation of People's Act 1951. After which it was commissioned in 1989 officially to be used for the national elections, and for the first time in 2004, EVMs were used in Lok Sabha elections. So this is our presiding officer's seat who controls the controlling unit, and this is the voting department. It is having two units. One is the ballot unit, and second is the VVPAT, which is verifiable voter paper audit trail. I believe that you all must have very recently voted for your particular constituencies. So when you see the VVPAT, do you see the name of the contestant or just the party name? Try to answer that, try to recall it. Now, a very important policy by EU, which is not liked by India, especially India's finance minister, is about the carbon border adjustment mechanism, the deforestation norms, which are fine minister finds unilateral and arbitrary, and also impeding the growth of India's export. Let's read on the article first. So Nirmala Sitharaman has recently said that these so-called environmentalist provisions of EU are unilateral and arbitrary. They have not taken the consensus of other nations who are involved into it or who will be facing the consequences, and they're essentially causing a barrier to trade for the Indian industry, because India contributes. EU is our fourth largest trading partner. What are these steps? Some of them are the carbon border adjustment mechanism, the EU's deforestation laws, and the safeguard duty that is imposed upon the steel imports that come from India. So these three cause barrier trade to us. In fact, because of the steel tariffs that were imposed on India's import, India has incurred a trade loss of about 4.4 billions between 2018 to 2023. Not only that, EU also extended its safeguard duties on the steel import for the next 5 years again. And EU carbon tariffs could also raise the cost of Indian export by 35%. And this is also very significant, as more than a quarter of the India's export of iron, steel and aluminium are headed towards EU market only. There's one particular CBAM clause which says that the exporters have to submit nearly 1,000 data points about their production method. Is also contested by the importers of India, by the industrialists of India, saying that this is a very clever way of them of gaining competitive advantage over us, because first of all it's going to make the entire process very burdensome, and second, this much data sharing could also expose the sensitive trade secrets of our industries. So, but the EU counter argument says that this is to gather the knowledge of the information of carbon footprints that have been made on that particular product. Now, from this article, we have picked up the carbon border adjustment mechanism. What is this? Deforestation law, safeguard duty on steel, which you have to quote in your mains, might also be asked in the UPSC exam, in the prelims exam. So what is carbon border adjustment mechanism? So what happens is that, let's say EU is importing something, okay, so that import product has got certain price on it. Now EU says that you should be putting a carbon price on it as to how much carbon emission has this product done. The most carbon intensive products are steel, cement, fertilizer industry, etc. And this is one of the top supplies that India provides to EU. So therefore, India's trades are at stake here. So EU imposes carbon prices on the product or the import that is coming into EU economy, so that the carbon, according to EU, the carbon outflow or the carbon leakages doesn't happen to its economy, which is targeting to become net zero by 2050. The second is EU deforestation law. It also says that any importer, let's say the importer of soy products, let's say the importer of palm oil, anything which is coming from a plantation area, let's say tea and coffee, if these importers are coming to India, they have to ensure that their crop was not grown on a deforested patch of land. That insurance has to be there. So EU deforestation laws also becomes very rigid for Indian exporters, especially the tea estate exporters. Next is the safeguard duty on the steel, which is also increased up to 10 times, and it also been extended up to 5 years more. So this has also led to fallout of the import of steel that were going from India, and also causing economic losses to the Indian economic industry. And I'll move to the next topic, which is RBI holding the rate at 6.5%. This is the repo rate. RBI is keeping it same for the 10th consecutive time in a row and is shifting its stance. So the repo rate interest rate is going to be the same, stance is going to be shifted from accommodative stance to neutral stance. What is the difference between these two? Let's learn. First of all, the decision was taken by Monetary Policy Committee. What is a Monetary Policy Committee? It is constituted by the central government, empowered by the section 45 ZB of the RBI Act 1934. It is a 6-membered body comprising of RBI Governor, Mr. Shaktikant Das, as the ex officio chairperson, the Deputy Governor of RBI in charge of the monetary policy, officer of the bank to be nominated by the central board, and 3 other persons to be nominated by the central government. So we have got 6 total persons in the Monetary Policy Committee, which constitutes itself for at least four times it meets in a year to discuss and to review its monetary policy stance. Monetary policy stance regulates the liquidity in the economy. So for example, if there is too much money in the economy, it will increase the repo rate. If there is less money in the economy, we would like to facilitate the lending, so we will decrease the repo rate. And this gets translated into the interest rate that we as consumer get from the bank. I hope this is clear. So what is the function of Monetary Policy Committee? To set these policy interest rate. Why they are naming it as policy interest rate? Because it's not just about repo rate, reverse repo rate, the statutory liquidity ratio, etc. We'll be looking into it. And also to fix our inflation, to manage our inflation. Inflation has to be kept within the band of 4% plus minus 2%, and this is set by the government accordance to the CPI, that is Consumer Price Index, and not the WPI. Now, what are the key highlights of this meeting of Monetary Policy Committee? First is that the repo remained, almost all the policy rates have remained unchanged. The first one is the repo rate. It has been the same for the 10th consecutive time. This is 6.50%. What is the repo rate? So repo rate is a rate at which the RBI lends to the bank, which means RBI gives money to the bank at certain interest rate. And because it is lending to the bank, it will be asking for security from the bank as well. This is not the only method through which RBI lends. There is also another rate, which is the bank rate. So let's say a bank comes to RBI and asks for loan for a longer period of time. For shorter period, of course, there is facility of availing it through the repo rate option. But for longer run, for longer term loan, the bank will be asking for some money. RBI would be giving this money without any securities. That is the difference between a repo rate and a bank rate. So naturally, the bank rate would be higher as compared to the repo rate, because here RBI is not asking for the security and giving the loan for longer run. Next is standing deposit facility, which is the rate is at 6.25%, again undisturbed. So what is standing deposit facility? Let's say a bank has got liquidity surplus. Now because this liquidity is sitting at my own bank, it is not giving many profit. But let's say if I deposit this liquidity to RBI, I can avail it later at much higher interest, because RBI would be providing me interest rate after it. So that liquid money, that rate at which RBI allows the bank to deposit or to park its surplus liquid in the RBI account, that is known as standing deposit facility. Now here you can see that bank is giving money to RBI. So is it not the reverse repo rate? No, reverse repo rate is also conducted for shorter term and in return of collateral. In case of standing deposit facility, no collateral is taken. Why no collateral is taken? Because this is already liquid surplus money with the bank. Next is marginal standing facility, again unchanged, 6.75%. Now what happens? Certain times banks incur liquidity crunch and would want to have the fund on an emergency basis, urgent basis. So therefore they will be marginally require some kind of fund which they will be repaying very quickly, within 15 days maybe. So therefore this is availed under higher interest rate. Therefore MSF rate is higher as compared to the repo rate. So this is the concept of repo rate, standing facility, deposit facility and bank rate, and how are they different from each other. Now while the policy rates have remained unchanged, what has changed is the RBI's policy stance. Till now, the policy stance was withdrawal of accommodation. Withdrawal of accommodation means to withdraw the excess liquidity from the market to ease off the inflation in the market. So previously, after post-COVID recovery, we were seeing that there were a lot of inflationary instances happening in Indian economy. To contain that inflation, RBI was continuously rising this repo rate. And therefore, it was performing withdrawal of accommodation, which is the tight money policy. But now it is changing its stance to neutral. Neutral means that it is now going to be flexible. It can either increase the repo rates or decrease the repo rates depending upon the condition of the economy, which is measured on the basis of inflation and the employment parameters. So this is the stance change. Why this neutral stance has been changed? Because now RBI is pretty much secure that inflation is under control, and RBI has already projected inflation for 4.5%, which is pretty much under the bandwidth of 4% plus minus 2 as targeted by us. Next is RBI has also revealed that we'll be having a climate risk information system. Next, it also enhanced the transaction limit and the wallet limit of UPI. So of UPI Lite actually. UPI Lite is the one in which there is no requirement of putting the PIN to initiate the transaction. You can do it without that also. So UPI Lite is also not a part of core banking system. It operates away from it, out of it. So anyway, previously the wallet limit was only 2000 rupees can be deposited in UPI Lite account. Now extended to 5000 because of the growing trust on digital economy of RBI. And the transaction limit initially was only 500 rupees per transaction. Now 1000 rupees per transaction. The next one is UPI 123. What is UPI 123? It is a non-internet based UPI for the people who are not having smartphones or who do not want to use internets for availing their transactions. They can use UPI 123, and for that also transaction limit has been enhanced from 5000 to 10,000. So these are some of the efforts taken by RBI, and these are the highlights. And the last topic of the day is the hitting of Hurricane Milton, causing devastation and making thousands of flee from their homes in Florida state of USA. So from the prelims point of view, we'll be seeing what are hurricanes. So what are hurricanes? Hurricanes are a type of tropical cyclones only. Yes, just like how we read what are the factors of formation of tropical cyclone, everything is valid in hurricane also. It is one of the most violent storms seen by the world after typhoon, and hurricanes can travel up to 300 miles per hour. And not only that, hurricanes can last up to 14 days, and it is fueled by what? Warm, moist air which is coming out of the tropical ocean region. Where are hurricanes exactly formed? They are formed in the west part of the Atlantic, here in the tropical belt. As you can see that these tropical cyclones gets formed in the tropical belt only, but with different names. For Indian Ocean, they are named as cyclones only. For Southeast Asia, they are named as typhoons. For East Australia, they are named as willy willies. And for the west of USA or for the west of Americas, they are named as hurricanes. There are different intensities of hurricanes. So it is calculated using the Saffir-Simpson wind scale. So if this comes to you, especially in the CA services, that what is Saffir-Simpson scale used for? It is used to calculate the category of hurricane, which is depending upon the wind speed and the damage or the catastrophe that it has caused. Now, is this the first hurricane of the year? No. How do we know this? By the naming. So what happens interestingly is that the first hurricane of the year is named with letter A, the second with letter B, and so the 13th hurricane would be named with the name N. So this is how the naming would be understandable. There are average 13 tropical cyclones per year. Sea temperature should be more than 27 degrees centigrade. And what is the time of occurrence? This time, August to October. So this was all about today's discussion. I hope you have liked it. Enjoy your learning until we meet again. Thank you.